Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kitchen Chat TV on the road. I'm Margaret McSweeney, and we're here in DeSoto at the very famous Tom's Place with the also very famous Chef Lasse Sorensen. So thank you so much, Chef Lasse.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Oh.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, well, this is a place of history. Before we jump into the cuisine, and we have a lot to chat about, could you share with the listeners and viewers about the history of Tom's Place?
Yes, the history of Tom's Place, this was a rowdy roadhouse back in the day. It was started in 1921 by Tom Ensley. And Tom Ensley got in trouble under Prohibition and put him in jail. But he ran the business successfully from jail through a period of years, and then he came back out, and then he ran for county sheriff and won. And then he wanted to get out of the restaurant business and sold it to Joe Moroni. And Joe Moroni, he was an Italian fella, and he was connected with the mafia in Chicago. So this was a halfway point for Al Capone and John Diller's operation in Chicago. So there was a lot of rivaling gangs down here in the 20s, but this place were always left alone because they knew that those were the big guys. You don't want to mess with the big guys. So there is a lot of people that have been killed here, I've been told, and they would push their cars out in the pit. There's old strip cuts in the back here. And so this was probably a halfway dangerous place back in the 20s. But when I took the place over, it was famous for fried frog legs, fried chicken, fried pork, everything fried. And I told everybody that I was going to make it into a five-star restaurant, and they all laughed and said, "You'll never make it." And so here we've been here for 20 years now, and I think people stop saying that we won't make it.
Yes, and I can't wait to talk about your incredible menu. But first, if you could give us a peek into your own culinary history. How did you end up in DeSoto? And if you could tell us a bit about your culinary training as well.
Okay, I was never asked as a kid what I wanted to be. My whole family's in the restaurant business, and my dad is a pastry chef. And he said, well, when you are big enough, you're going to be washing dishes. Then you're going to help in the bakery and the pastry shop. And then when you're old enough, you'll become an apprentice. So I did that and got a very good education through my dad. And then I always wanted to be a chef. And my dad was quite upset that I didn't want to, because he thought I had a lot of talent as a pastry chef. But my heart has always been in the kitchen. And so he was very disappointed, but because of him, I got a job at a Michelin star restaurant in Copenhagen as an apprentice there. I went there and applied for the job, and they told me that there was 300 applicants, and I probably wouldn't hear from them again. And then I told him who my dad was, and then I got the job right away. I kind of tried and wanted to do it on my own, but I realized that it was better just to drop a name if you could. So I ended up going to school for 7 years, so I have a master's degree in culinary arts. And then my dream was always to go to the United States. So I got a job at the Riviera Country Club in Pacific Palisades, and they host a PGA tournament. And I got to meet a lot of movie stars out there. It was kind of interesting. Not that they talked to me other than saying they wanted their meat well done, a medium, or whatever, but it was an interesting time. And then I started working for the Kellogg Foundation, and they had 13 restaurants, and I was overseeing those restaurants. I had a nice office and a secretary and a lot of days off and made a lot of money, but my heart was still in the kitchen, and all this office jobs were just not for me. So after 5 years I had enough, and I tried to talk my wife into buy a restaurant, and we had two options. We could either go to Napa Valley or we could go to DeSoto, Illinois. I had seen this restaurant on a fishing trip, and my wife is originally from this area, and she said that there is no way she was going to move from Newport Beach, California to DeSoto, Illinois. So I had to wait another 2 years, and thank God she got tired of her job. And then I called the restaurant owners and I said, I know I haven't spoken to you for 2 years, but the restaurant's still for sale, and it was. And we just took the plunge, and we came out here and started. It was in 1998, and we just little by little just built on it and built on it and built on it. And we have a solid following now. We have a Wine Spectator Award, and we have a 5-star rating now from the North American Restaurant Association, and we're very proud of that. So that was kind of the short story, but everybody that comes to the restaurant always asks me, well, what are you doing in DeSoto, Illinois? And I always told them I was going to Chicago, but I got off at the wrong station. So that's the quick story about how I ended up here. But that said, we love Southern Illinois now, and we're used to the pace. It's obviously a lot different being a chef down here than in a big city. And one of the trade-offs I had to make with my wife was I promised her we would never be open on any of the holidays, and we would have 2 days off. So we have religiously done that, and that's how I could persuade her to come out here. And that's one of the nice things about having a restaurant here, that you also have time to do other things.
Yes, and it's beautiful down here. And for those listeners who aren't in the Southern Illinois area, it's definitely worth a trip, a delicious destination here. But if we can take a quick step back into your culinary training once again. But prior to that, your dad, you kind of mentioned him, but could you mention what he was well known for? It's so impressive.
Yeah, my dad is known for being the pastry chef to the royal family in Denmark. And he ran one of the biggest pastry shops in Europe for many years in Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen. And also he's known for, he's made the biggest wedding cake in the world. It's in the Guinness Book of Records. I helped him with that too. And obviously it was a different era when he was doing all this stuff, because not a lot of people anymore uses big decorations and big cakes and stuff. That takes a lot of artistic skill to do that. Things have changed a lot now, but he was a fantastic craftsman, and had a museum about pastries for a long time, and unfortunately he passed away last November. But it was always the first thing in his heart was pastries. So he would come over here and visit, and he would make these big cake buffets, and all my customers knew when my dad was here, and they were like, when is he coming back? When is he coming back? Because, there were so many pastries here that I normally don't have.
That is
and
so
one of the interesting things that you don't realize, two guys like us being in the business together, if we sit at home and watch TV or anything like that, we're both not really enjoying it. But when we are working together, we enjoyed it tremendously, and we talked about everything. So that was the great thing about him coming over here.
Oh, that is so special. And as the listeners and viewers know, the reason I do Kitchen Chat is a way to honor my late father, who was an incredible gourmet home chef. And my biggest regret in life was not cooking with him in the kitchen and learning how to cook. So 25 years later, I am discovering what his joy of cooking was about. And it's just such an honor to be a part of this.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of this is getting lost. My family, when I grew up, they would let me do just about anything I wanted, but I always had to be home for dinner. Yes. And the weekends, we all prepared meals together and ate together, and that was something that was religiously, you could never be late. And, that's somewhat lost today, I think, and cooking good food like that, and it's also healthy food when you prepare it yourself, that's something we have to really embrace now, and try to get, the younger people to understand how important that is.
Yes, that is so true. And speaking of great food, once again, your culinary training, could you share with us about Chef Paul Bocuse?
Yes, the restaurant I was trained in, the master chef there, his name was Jan Peterson, and he was a fantastic talent. And I was fortunate enough working for him. I figured at 3.5 years I was under contract to stay there. That's how the apprenticeship program is. And the schedule was 2 days, 2 days off. And for the most part, I always showed up every single day for those 3.5 years, because I figured you have such an opportunity, and if I came in extra, he would show me more. And he really embraced me as a person and treated me like his own son, because I put so much into it. And then he was kind enough to introduce me to a lot of famous chefs. And we went to Bocuse d'Or, which is a big competition in Europe. We went there together and won the prize for the best fish dish there. And he took me to a very many different Michelin-star restaurant, all 3-star restaurants, to kind of get a feeling for how special it is when the food is put in such a high seat that it is in France. And it's very unique to that country. People that has 3-star restaurants there, they're the mayors of the city, and they have more power. And I remember at the Bocuse d'Or, the French president was there, François Mitterrand. He was there at the time, and we had a big dinner for 3,000 people. And he would walk in, nobody paid any attention. Paul Bocuse walked in, everybody was quiet, and he said, "Bon appetit," and everybody sat down and ate. So that's where the respect lies in that country. It was very interesting. But so I, for the most part, try to teach the people that work for me that, like, the same way. I'm not, one of these European chefs that yells and screams. That we get a lot of bad publicity for that, and I have never believed in yelling at anybody, and everybody makes mistakes, and it's a good thing to make mistakes, because you learn how to recover from your mistakes. And that's how I was trained, so that's how I run my kitchen too. And but still, it's extremely hard to find anybody, and I don't know if it's okay for me to tell you on air now, but I'm looking for an apprentice right now. I have had ads in the paper for 3 months, and I haven't had one applicant. And you should think that would be somebody that would like to come and work for a chef like me and learn everything about cooking. And that's very disappointing that nobody down here is interested. But it's the commitment that they can't handle, I guess. That you have to work Friday and Saturday night, you're off Sunday and Monday. And then you have to say, basically yes sir, no sir, and you have to be on time. Right. You can't call in sick, all those things. And it's. I would love to teach my craft to some younger people, and hopefully something will show up, and we can get going on it. But again, back to my education. That was really a groundbreaking experience, that you were involved in. My dad was the highest you can get in the pastry world, and then I worked in this restaurant that was the best restaurant in Scandinavia at the best time at that time, and you had plenty of opportunity to see the most incredible things. We had people coming in and buy 1 kilo jars of caviar, and that was not unusual. And there was a shift where there was a Saudi king that came in and gave Rolexes to everybody in the kitchen. I mean, this was just an error that was unbelievable to have experienced. Where you took your heads of salad, they told us to break half of it off and throw it away, and only use the hearts of everything, because they didn't want any green on the leaves. And it's quite wasteful, but it was an interesting period to see, where obviously now things have changed, and now we learn to use cheaper cuts of meat. But at that time, it was just the best of the best. So I tried to take some of this. Some of the stuff that I've remembered and bring it out here, and you should think in Southern Illinois it would be a hard sell, but it really isn't. It's interesting. It's the cheaper dishes on my menu I have a hard time selling, And the most expensive dishes, like we sell a Kobe ribeye for $75, and we sell a lot of it. And we have aged steaks, 60-day aged steaks, 30-day aged steaks. We sell a lot of them. That's the really our business, And people come from Chicago, St. Louis, from far away, and I always refer to Southern Illinois as a culinary desert, but we are an oasis in the desert. So most people that come here, they can't believe the stuff that we actually do here. Yeah. And we try to do a lot of special things that you don't see. Like all last week, we had flown in Dover sole, and it was just flying off the shelf as fast as we could make them.
Wow.
And live lobsters, and we do all those things you would think that we couldn't sell here, but we do.
Oh, this is terrific, and I'm going to provide a link, listeners and viewers, to this restaurant. But if we can also chat about, when I heard this, my heart just melted, that you were one of the chefs with Babette's Feast.
Yes.
And I just have to share with you all listeners and viewers, and with you, Chef, that movie, Babette's Feast, was the very first date my now husband and I went on. We both lived in New York City, so I've always just had such a love in my heart for Babette's Feast, and it was such a beautiful movie. Yeah. Can you share with us what that experience was like, and if you could help me remember what was on the menu, and do you feature any of that here?
It's that movie has opened so many doors for me, and that's actually the real reason why I came to the United States in the first place. The producer of the movie is Danish, or was Danish. He's passed away now, but he was a producer in Hollywood. And he wanted to open a restaurant in Los Angeles called Babette's Feast, because the movie was a low-budget movie, and it sold to every country in the world, and he made a ton of money. So like many other people that made a ton of money, they want to have a restaurant so they can lose some. He wanted to open a restaurant, and he took Jan Petersen, who trained me, and we were supposed to come over here with a whole crew of chefs. And it was in 1989, and then the recession hit, and they pulled the plug on the project, and everybody went home, and I decided to stay. But the menu, the reason why I did so much work on the menu as opposed to any other chefs was the fact that I was a pastry chef, because the star of the movie didn't like anything. So I actually had to make escargot out in marzipan, and so when some of the food that she eats in the movie is made out of pastries, because she didn't want to eat any of it. So that movie is it's in my heart, and the menu is a fantastic menu, and the producer wanted to make an English version of it, and he actually casted Meryl Streep and Marlon Brando, and then he passed away. Sutton passed away, but there is copyright on the movie now. There wasn't in the beginning, but there were so many people that copied the menu, and you've seen it everywhere in the United States too. And he just never thought of copyrighting it in the beginning, because I guess he didn't expect it to go as far as it did, and so they copyrighted it with me having rights to make the menu in the United States, and Mr. Petersen has the rights to make the menu in Europe. So we are tinkering with the idea of maybe him coming over here, and if there was a fundraising organization or anything like that that would fly him over here, and we've talked to several people about it, and then it would be a fun thing to do together. And I have made the menu here one time, and I had a packed house from all over the United States, because now it's copyrighted. Yeah. So I made the original menu here. I think I had about 200 people, and that's about the max of what I can handle here. And it was very successful. But it's a great menu, and it's a great story. And there's a lot of things to learn in the movie about food, so and about people. So it was a great experience, and it took maybe 3 or 4 months where we were out there in the studios. It was all done in the studios, all the food in Copenhagen, and it was just an incredible experience.
Oh, and definitely check out Babette's Feast if you've never seen that. It's just, it warms your heart. It's about the love of food and the passion for food and sharing it with the community. You're right, there's just so many great lessons, but this was so interesting to learn that you made the escargot from marzipan.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I mean, my dad taught me to make anything out of to look at, to whatever you can dream up. We can make a cake that looks like that or a pastry that looks like that. He was very artistic, so I had no problem making things that everybody would eat. So, but another funny story about Babette's Feast is we ran the menu at the restaurant at the time where I was an apprentice, and it was the restaurant was called La Cocotte, and so the chef there, it's a very intricate way that you have to cut a quail out and then stuff it with foie gras and truffles, and then you put it in a coffin, they called it, of puff pastry. Wow. So he said, well, let's have a competition. There'll be a small prize to win for who can debone a quail the fastest. So obviously I'm up for it, and I by far outdo everybody else, not knowing that this was a setup, because guess who deboned every quail that did in that restaurant from here on out. So that was kind of a bittersweet victory, but I can definitely do that.
Oh, that is impressive. Now, what have your personal lessons been along your culinary journey?
Well, one of the things that I have changed a lot since I come out here is that I was from a European restaurant, cutting edge cuisine, and I was fortunate enough to get a job at a big restaurant in Newport Beach called John Dominus. That was a Hawaiian restaurant of all, and how that all went about was because the owner of the restaurant used to work at Scandia. He was a general manager from Scandia in Los Angeles, and had a lot of experience with Danish chefs. And the fish, how we cook fish, so many different types of fish, it kind of goes hand in hand with Hawaiian cuisine, who has a lot of fish in it. And so this restaurant I worked at was a fantastic restaurant, and I mean, just fresh fish all the time, Hawaiian fish. And I learned so much there in a short time. It was a very busy place, and so that kind of shaped my career, because he was teaching me that one of the things you need to understand, he said, coming to America versus a European, the European chefs are very, very good at what they're doing, but they're not good businessmen, and they can't make any money. They will spend 5 hours preparing one Dover sole, and that you can't make any money doing that. So he taught me how to make money, and I'm very happy, because that kind of shaped my career, that I learned that you have to have skills in both departments. Mm-hmm. You have to learn to make money, and then you have to improve the product you're trying to sell in a way that it becomes profitable. And coming to Southern Illinois for the first time, in the beginning, I was like, nobody here wanted to eat any raw fish, and I did so much raw fish, so I had to change that. And everybody wanted their meat well done, and they weren't eating any Hawaiian fish either. That if it wasn't something that was caught around here, they didn't want it. But that has really changed. In the beginning, I struggled with that, and I have slowly but surely changed the customers that came here. And I said, you know what, I would like you to try this, and if you don't like it, you don't have to pay for it. And now there is hardly any of my customers that don't want to eat anything that I do. So I'm happy that I provided some kind of education for some people out here to get them accustomed to eating other things at the same thing all the time. So but it took a long time. It took about 10 years to turn it into what it is today. Before it got momentum, because in the beginning it was just steak and potatoes. But I had to do that to make it.
True.
So it's been a journey, but there is a light in the end of the tunnel for anybody who's trying to do what I did. So.
And an opportunity to be an apprentice. So
Yes.
we're definitely going to get this word out even further, because what an honor and an opportunity to be an apprentice in your kitchen.
And one of the things about working in a small place like mine versus working at a big hotel is that you get to see everything and you learn everything. And there's so much more teamwork here too, because it's a small group of people and we all have to get along. And every apprentice I've had here is now an executive chef in a great restaurant somewhere. So this is a great stepping stone for anybody, because the network of people in the United States is also such that they know if they've been here with me and they lasted under my reign for 3.5 years, they have what it takes.
Yes.
And that's the best stamp of approval. It's important, of course, to have a formal education too, but an apprenticeship in hand with culinary education from a school is the way to go, and because you really learn everything you have to learn to make it.
Yes, for sure. And what about for the home chef? So what are some takeaways for those listeners who aren't professional chefs but just make home dishes? What advice would you have?
Well, it's funny because when I met my wife, she thought of herself being a great home cook, and obviously I had to tread the waters very careful when I criticized in any shape or form. And she actually does most of the cooking at home, and I just sit and watch her and try not to criticize too much. But one of the things that I always try to explain to people that cook at home is that when you follow a recipe, like my wife wanted to follow the recipe to the T. There was no, changing anything on the recipe. You couldn't stray from it, which you have to understand with food, there is a lot of flexibility in the product you're using. So therefore, if you follow the recipe, sometimes it doesn't come out right because you have to be flexible with the materials you're using. So flexibility is very important, and then obviously being able to taste your food, learn to taste the food and see what it needs. That's what most home cooks lack, is taste the food, because they read the recipe and say, okay, it needs half a tablespoon of salt and this, but everything, there are so many variables that you really need to taste it and say, okay, it needs a little more acidity, it needs a little more salt, and it makes the world of a difference in the end. So that is my advice. Be flexible and taste the food, even though it didn't say that in the recipe. Learn that, okay, it needs some sweetness, or it needs some vinegar, or whatever in there.
Yes, great advice from a fabulous chef such as you. I will take that home with me. Now, speaking of taste and deliciousness, what is on your menu recently? Have you added anything, and is there still a signature dish?
Well, how this restaurant is set up is I have a menu that is basically consistent with the fact that those are things that people want every time they come here. So that is all my classic items on the menu. And then we have about 20 specials every day. And that varies with the season, like last week we had Dover sole and live lobsters, and this week we have scallops, oysters, fresh mussels, and we have fresh grouper, Florida grouper this week, and we try to do something with that. And so that will change all the time, and like a week from now we're into soft shell crab season, so we're going to do a lot of that. And then another week past that, we have the biggest event here we have once a year, which is our annual Morel Dinner. Southern Illinois is abundant with morels, and I already have about 30 pounds. I need about 100 pounds for the event. And that is a big deal down here. And I sell about 100 tickets for the event every year. I don't want to do any more. And then it's a 6-course meal that has morels in all of the dishes.
Wow, and morel is a mushroom. And how does that compare to truffles? What is the variety?
Well, I mean, morels are, they pop up. Unlike truffles are in the ground, but both very valuable mushroom. Morels are very, very expensive to buy, so it's a very unique opportunity in the next couple of weeks in Southern Illinois. You can buy them here a lot cheaper than you can in any of the big cities because they're very prized possessions in big cities too, and they're everywhere down here in Southern Illinois. So we kind of make a celebration out of it, if you could say that, every year, and it's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun over the years to make that menu. And my dad actually created a special tiramisu with morels in it. He came over one year and helped me with that, and that was a big success. And Joe McFarlane, who's a mushroom expert, he wrote a book about mushrooms in Southern Illinois. And there's some wonderful recipes in that book, and there's pictures of the tiramisu, and there's pictures of several of my dishes in there. So that would be an interesting book for anybody who's interested in picking mushrooms and cooking mushrooms. Yes. So.
Oh, that just sounds like an incredible celebration.
And morels are just such a wonderful flavor to work with, and you can imagine the flexibility you have to have, and the challenge it is to make 6 dishes, including the dessert, with morels. And some years it's been tough because if it's a bad season and there's not very many morels, it was a losing proposition on our part. And you were like, well, why would you sell anything in advance, But we've always managed to make it. So I think it's on April 27th this year. It's always the last Wednesday of April.
Oh, terrific. And have you revealed your menu yet?
I'm still working on it. It's almost done. Great. So.
Oh, well, this sounds just incredible, Chef. And any other final words of wisdom or fun memories of your culinary journey that you'd like to share?
We could sit here and talk all day long because, I have so many memories. I've been in a lot of places in the world and cooked with a lot of great chefs. And, I hope that I can find somebody that would embrace what I've learned. And like I said, get people more involved in cooking and celebrating food, because with all this turmoil in the world, we can all agree about food and wine, and break bread with anybody at any religion. So I think that this is something that we really need to embrace more than we do.
That is so well said. And the kitchen is the heart of the home, but I always like to say it's the heart of the world.
It is.
And food is a universal language.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, and everyone, please come visit.
Yes, please
Chef Lasse here in DeSoto at Tom's Place. I'll leave a link, and let me know if you're at the Morel. That just sounds like a fun celebration. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you.
We don't get any celebrities down here like you, so thank you very much for coming.
Oh, well, you're very kind. Thank you. And listeners and viewers, thank you, because this is all about sharing the journey, and I love to hear from you. Please visit me on Facebook, Kitchen Chat, also in my virtual kitchen, which is kitchenchat.info. And always remember to take a moment and savor the day.